Absolute escalation is coming our way. Top 11 agenda item today in the German Bundestag. They want to accelerate the Bundeswehr much more. And yes, the first reconnaissance troops have flown to Greenland. However, there's a huge catch that I missed in the press. There was already the next escalation against the United States of America.
I read that this is supposed to be done in conjunction with NATO and that Germany doesn't want to go ahead alone.
That's actually wrong. These troops are not under NATO command. They made sure that these troops are not under the influence of Norfolk in South Carolina, but are under the authority of this federal government. And this reconnaissance team of 13 soldiers is supposed to scout out what kind of bases can be built there. However, if they are attacked, then we have a NATO incident. NATO sounds strange, but that's just how it is. And what did the Tagesschau actually make of it yesterday? Let's take a look at that now to see how people like that can even make such statements.
Meanwhile, Denmark wants to strengthen its military presence in Greenland. Sweden and Norway also want to send soldiers, but for now only for an exercise.
As of this morning, the Germans also wanted to send troops, but be careful, not for an exercise, for reconnaissance, and this afternoon in the Bundestag. I'll read it to you quickly. Before I make any mistakes there, it's about speeding up the spending, really speeding it up, and also speeding up the procedures. That means you'll probably be able to just access the money you got through tricks and distribute it on a large scale. Deadlines will be shortened. And the earmarking, well, it just doesn't matter anymore, and there's no basis for it anymore. We are not at peace, but we are also not at war yet. And that could probably change in the next few days if they don't start de-escalating here. I don't know. Do you guys feel like going to war against the United States of America? I think that's the last thing I would ever want.
The meeting was moved at short notice to the Eisenhower building behind me because the United States Vice President J.D. Vance also joined in. That was certainly a diplomatically unconventional move. Normally that wasn't planned, and there were some concerns that it might bring a certain aggressive tone to the meeting. That doesn't seem to have been the case. We saw that as well.
However, if I follow the American press or even Welt and Springer or whatever, it's very clear that no agreement was reached. And now I'll address something else from today in the Bundestag specifically, and I'd like to read this out again. In order to create the legal framework for the 13 soldiers going to Greenland, some things will be discussed in the Bundestag today. First, the legal framework, so that the necessary logistical base can be established in Germany without annoying citizen protests and environmental regulations. Now, apparently destroying the climate is allowed. After all, it's about everyone's safety, and you're not allowed to protest against it because the appeal period has been reduced to 2 weeks. And then only if there are people like me who can search the internet as quickly as possible. I don't know. What do you think about that? Just putting the will of the people on the back burner again, and above all, sending troops into a potential crisis area against the United States of America. Hey, we've been through that before. It wasn't good, and above all, it didn't end well either.
When there was an open clash between two NATO partners, because would the United States of America, the biggest and most important ally, have threatened another NATO member openly on stage? That would have been, in fact, a really big problem for Article 5 and for NATO as a whole.
I just explained it to you. Isn't that exactly what NATO is actually doing right now? NATO doesn't wait until an agreement has been reached, or even if an agreement has been reached at all. No, NATO is sending, the Bundeswehr is sending soldiers without NATO. Why are they doing that? There is a control center in Norfolk in the United States of America that manages everything. And because it's controlled in the United States of America and they have authority over the operation, communication goes through the individual countries. And that excludes the United States of America from it. And the question I'm asking myself here, maybe someone can answer it for me, is why are they already excluding the United States of America from these military operations? Even though, well, there hasn't been an agreement, or rather they agreed that they wouldn't find an agreement. But these strategic moves were made beforehand, and Donald Trump knows that too. And I wonder, man, the European Union can suddenly become very, very fast.
What choices do Europeans and NATO have?
They're limited since Europeans and NATO rely heavily on the United States. That's why the idea of maybe defending Greenland militarily against the United States someday is completely absurd.
But then I wonder why they want to increase military spending. And when we're talking about just 1% here, we're talking about an additional 45 billion euros bases that can simply be built in Germany or in Greenland, which we can just pay for without any citizen protests or without running the risk of getting any. Why do something like that if you don't intend to? Well, I really have to say it like this: to defend our NATO Europe forced interests against the United States of America. What logical reason is there for that? And above all, what logical reason is there to discuss or try to pass such a strict law today? That's the Federal Printed Matter 219/1931. You can read it yourselves. There's a whole lot more in there so that, well, once again, they have full control without having to rely on the fringes, because they know very well that the right-wingers and also the left-wingers won't play along when it comes to going against the United States of America or even going to war against Russia and getting actively involved themselves.
Now it's about quickly increasing NATO's presence in the Arctic. NATO Secretary General Rutte already announced that yesterday. It's likely about expanding military maneuvers and missions, and according to media reports, Germany is sending an initial reconnaissance team to Greenland this week. But the deployment of larger troop contingents from NATO allies is currently considered unlikely here.
Here's where the mistake is, and that's the lie you're trying to force on us again. To the best of my knowledge, according to what I know after all my research, tonight, these are not NATO troops, they are Bundeswehr troops. They are troops from individual countries that are under the authority of their own parliaments. Nothing to do with Europe and NATO anymore. There were several statements yesterday saying that we absolutely need a European army now to bring everything together, to kick the Americans out. Just look it up, check the sources. The point here is to make sure the Americans have absolutely no more operational objectives. And well, didn't a Kiesewetter so nicely demand to continue building up the nuclear power of the Germans? Guys, are we at war? Are we going to war? No, I don't think so yet. Is it saber rattling? Yes, definitely. However, we know it from Iran, we know it from Venezuela, from Mexico, and also from Syria. And this man in the United States is absolutely extremely dangerous. Will he interpret this tonight or tomorrow as an attack? Well, how are we supposed to defend Ukraine then? Hold out, pour in even more money, pay much, much more money. What are you planning? You're destroying yourselves with your sanctions. You're destroying yourselves with all the money you're throwing around everywhere. And you seriously believe that the United States will go along with everything. And I'm telling you, by the way, what the Tagesschau actually said that was true. J.D. Vance is an absolute hardliner, really a hardliner, and he won't put up with that. And by the way, he has quite a lot of influence on Donald Trump, which also has an impact in the United States. As of this morning, the United States already considers this an attack on the United States. Of course, I'll keep you updated throughout the day. and will probably make another video after this meeting, even though it wasn't planned.